Good story.
Gauge next.
Pressure gauge?
Gauge.
Let's do it.
All right, we did this in the National Hour. Tried to just gauge the general pressure of these coaches. Now, we're going to do this in a different sense here. I don't want to do the categories unless y'all did the categories. I'm just going to rattle off some topics here. And all of mine are players that I think are under tremendous pressure this year, like this one right here. I think Xavier Truss is under a bunch of pressure, both from a last year of college, we really have to improve upon the draft stock that we came back to improve upon. Most people will call this a bag year. It's certainly a bag year for Xavier Truss, but you're also under a tremendous amount of pressure because there's a bunch of talent behind you. Like, you got to fight your job off every year or every week. Okay. Because though you're trying to increase your NFL draft product, there are NFL draft products behind you, like waiting to get playing time. So I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure on him. I think Carson's pressures are different this year because last year it was pressure to perform. This year it's pressures of expectation. Last year he entered the year trying to prove that he is good. This year he is trying to live up to great that people are thrusting upon him. There's two different types of pressure there.
Correct.
Last year's chip on shoulder, I got shit to prove. This year you're driving a Lambo, you're getting paid $1.5 million. Everyone thinks you're a first round draft pick. You've got to go live up to that. Two different types of pressure. I think he handles both really well, so I don't think it's a problem. But we're here to measure it and gauge it, and I think there's undoubtedly a different level of pressure on Carson this year. This guy's immensely talented. He's a 5-star. He's great, and he's got NFL player written on him. But Raylan Wilson just had a bunch of those types of football players enter his room as well. Mm-hmm. Like, Raylan Wilson watched C.J. Allen become what he is about to be this year. He watched Smile Mondon come back. And, oh, by the way, 3 mutants just entered the room. Justin Williams just showed up. He's bigger than you. He's as fast as you, and he is longer than you. The same could be said about Chris Cole. And Christopher Jones just showed up, too, who is just as gifted from the Lords above as you are. I don't know if he feels that, but I would. I would be looking at it like, damn, I don't know how I'm an injury away from starting. Don't get me wrong, but like, I'm still the 3 here of a group of 6 that are really, really good, and I'm 3. And I'm 1 injury away from being 2, and I'm 6 months away from being 5 if I'm not careful. That's a lot of pressure. The same could be said about Lawson Lucky. Lawson Lucky just had Jaden Riddell show up. Jaden Riddell is a freak. Lawson Lucky's like 6 months from Elias Williams showing up on campus. That's going to be scary. Lawson Lucky just had Jurasic show up, or is about to have Jurasic show up. Still got Oscar Delp in the room, and there's a lot of that right there for a team that played 72% 11 personnel last year. That means 28% of the time, 2 people in my position were on the field. The rest of the time, only 1 guy's on the field, and I'm number 3 on the depth chart right now, assuming Jurasic beats me out. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure for fall camp. And Jonel Aguero's got an immense amount of pressure.
Yeah, I had him on my list.
An immense amount of pressure.
I think that Daniel Harris and Julian Humphrey are under an immense amount of pressure just because, like, they obviously came back because they feel that they are going to play this year, and they will. Obviously, those 2 guys are going to play, but you're telling me that there's this guy named Ellis Robinson walking around that place, and every time he gets on the field and he makes a flash play, I feel like I got to match that. I got to play just as good.
You can feel that guy in Indies. I promise you. Somebody that talented, that you know, as a football player, when you see somebody that is that gifted, you know it's everywhere. It's not just when I'm out there. Like, you feel that shit in practice, how good that kid is.
Yeah, I mean, every time you mess up now, like, you're thinking like, is that going to be the one that puts him on the field? It's like, is that going to be the one that puts him on top? Now, again, both of those guys are very talented. They're going to play this year, but there's some pressure there for sure.
Bro, this player that's in the chat right now, we're back to overlooked, is so overlooked. We didn't even mention him in the overlooked.
I almost did.
Jalen Walker?
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about him. And he might lead the team in sacks and only play on 3rd down this year.
Yeah.
Facts.
You got any pressure gauge folks for us?
Yeah, I think Arian Smith's got a lot of pressure this year because, I mean, you went from in 2021 and 2022 as like a game breaker deep threat guy. I mean, part of the reason you came back and won that Peach Bowl against Ohio State was because of Aaron Smith's those 2 incredibly deep passes he had, or catches he had, to where in 2023 it was kind of like, oh, he can't do anything. He drops the ball all the time. He can't block. What good is he on the field for? And now you've got a guy like Anthony Evans who is kind of in that similar role as you. I think 2024 is a massive year for him pressure-wise because it's essentially his last year to prove anything.
The dropsies weren't my big problem with Aaron last year. It was the fact that he became unplayable because he both was dropping the ball and could not block.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I hate questioning effort and toughness of football players, but there is a very obvious, you did not want to block that guy. We can talk like you ran to that, but you did not effort as if you wanted to get that done. That's got to change, and it changed this spring. I saw some of it during G-Day.
Yeah, he was definitely
some
putting
high effort, like, okay, dude's playing football today. He's not just trying to catch a ball. And there's a very strong difference at wide receiver every once in a while. Do you have any more?
I would say I'm going to chat on this one a little bit of like Nazir and Warren are in pressure situations, but just really for themselves. Because it's not like if those two guys don't really live up to these expectations that Georgia's in trouble. Now, it wouldn't be ideal, certainly. That would kind of put you in a similar position that you were last year of like, not really where we want to be at the defensive line. But I think that also, like, you've had some guys get older. You've added some guys into that room. You added Xavier McLeod to where you maybe could make that up. But for those two guys, as you always say, like, these are bag years. There's a lot of pressure on you to capitalize off of that and get a return on your investment of why you came back to play football this year.
Yeah, those are definitely personable goals, bag years for those guys. The pressure on the roster of like, hey, it's time to shake or bake comes from Jordan Hall and Christian Miller.
Yeah,
it's time to make something happen or not. Okay, it's year 2 for Hall, year 3 for Christian Miller. And Ja Jarrett gets thrown into that mix as well. Hey, are you going to be, Mount Ja? Or the Taj Jamal, as we called him, or are you not? Okay, we need that massive human. It sounds like, we haven't talked about Ja at all this offseason. I feel like he did have a good spring. He did have a good offseason. He did have a good last year of practice. Okay. He lost the weight that he needed to. He kept the weight off during the holidays that he needed to. He showed up in spring practice at the shape in which he did. And by the way, he's tough. Okay. I think that's a characteristic of Georgia defensive linemen that I tend to overlook on the evaluation process of like, hey, is this kid really, really tough? Because Georgia's about to make him be tough during practice forever. Okay. They talk about how hard Georgia football practices. That shows up more for defensive linemen than anybody else, okay? Because offensive linemen have to play physical for a second and a half. Initial contact and strike, okay? That's it. Defensive linemen, initial contact and strike, sprint your ass to the football and run through contact as if you do not care. All right, that's a different level of tough, and Josh showed up and played tough this spring. So I'm with you on those guys. There's a lot of pressure on that interior defensive line room. Let's talk about this home and home between Georgia and Florida, and then we'll call it a night. All right, even though we do have a player of the day who I think is the best offensive tackle in the class, Zaire Addison. I think that guy. I know David Sanders is going to play on Sundays. I think Zaire Addison. I don't even know what I would compare him to. Maybe one day he looks like old buddy from the 49ers, Trent Williams. But he doesn't have the gut Trent Williams got. Trent Williams does all that shit with a gut, and that's crazy. That's really crazy. Trent Williams and Jason Peters are like a own category of unique athleticism. Zaire Addison's a power forward playing tackle, and I don't know where the comp for him is yet, but he is the best tackle in the country, in my opinion.